Thank you for joining us again for another great conversation I know we are about to have with Sara Lowery. Lowery. I'm David Stollman and co-founder of CAMPUSPEAK and excited to invite you into these conversations. Today will be certainly a special one, and we have an amazing topic, an amazing woman to be in conversation with for our webinar series. And briefly, I will introduce my friend Sara, and then we'll get right into some conversation that I hope will inform a perspective on hazing prevention that is needed among all the programming that's out there. And there certainly is a lot and a lot of different styles and ways of reaching student audiences. This is one that I really want to highlight. But let me tell you a little bit about my friend Sara. She's been a professional speaker and has been in the higher ed field as a campus-based professional at many institutions, and the University of Delaware now is where she gets to call home. She's been talking in a lot of the topics around self-love as a speaker and how that plays out for individuals and within close communities. And for over 15 years, she's supported students, which is shocking. 15, you started so young. Supporting students as they navigate through college and their experiences and helping them to come up with whys to reach goals and hows to do them. Many people have recognized and many organizations have awarded her and provided accolades. But individual mentoring still centers in her heart. And her company, Empower You, was created really to engage more people successfully in that work, especially with younger girls and younger adult women. And she calls Salisbury home, but close enough to Philly that we love it. And she has gotten her master's degree of education from Texas Tech and her undergraduate from Salisbury. I've gotten to know Sara. There are a few people with bigger hearts and more caring for the development of students and individuals. And I'm excited to spend some time talking about how we can create cultures of care and what that really means in the work of hazing prevention. So, to start us off, as I said, there are lots of different ways that hazing prevention education can happen.
Yeah.
And different sort of communities at different spaces and different times need different things. And, campus-based professionals should ask those questions about what do we need right now to fit into a much larger view of hazing prevention? Because one speaker can't do it. One speaker is a piece of a larger set of tools that should be employed over a longer period of time. And when they're looking at what to provide, considering something different. And in this idea, if you were to put prevention work into two kind of buckets in the education part, there's the push, and that might be the don'ts, the avoid this, and more compliance based. Here, you need to know the rules, you need to understand state law, federal law, and you need to be able to, as students and leaders, be able to act accordingly. And it's important that they know those guidelines. And also, push could also be some of that worst case scenario. Here are horrible things that have happened, and what we should be thinking about to avoid them. In the other bucket is really kind of the pull. Here's what we could be doing. It's more empowering, more engaging. It's more, in some ways, inspirational because it sets forth a vision of what's possible. And I think Sara lives in much more that world. Compliance can be done, but lives in that empowering and inspiring world with the education. And that's where the culture of care really comes in. So I want this long setup to invite you, Sara, to describe and really explain to people when you're talking about culture of care, what does that mean? And maybe in comparison to what most people think of as hazing prevention work in a compliance-based educational program, what's culture of care and how is that used as a model by you to explain what could be for onboarding
Mhm.
of new members of teams and fraternities and sororities and clubs and organizations?
That's a great question. Thanks so much for the intro. When I think about the culture of care, it's not a check by item event or program. It's a mindset. It's how we naturally think about how to protect someone. One of the things I start with, like if you had a baby in your hand, right? If you had a little baby, you're going to do everything to protect the baby. Are you going to birth the baby? You're going to protect it. And I think when I'm thinking of culture of care, that's what I'm thinking. I think oftentimes people go of like, oh, I love you. Like, but it's so much more. Love is a huge part, but it's not the only part, right? When we think about the compliance part, the compliance is because we care for our students in general, we want to make sure these rules, guidelines are followed to the T so that we can feel knowledgeable and feel secure enough to know that they're reasonably safe. But when we create a culture of care, that means that we're thinking in every aspect of entanglement, whatever we do, whether it's going to lunch or whether it's hanging out, that we are making sure that anybody around us or in our vicinity feels a sense of safe, feels they feel cared for, they feel a sense of belonging, they feel like this is a place where I want to be, where I can grow, where I can learn. And so when we say create this culture, we're saying your mind should always be thinking about in this activity, during this event, or doing this thing, as are my members safe? Are my friends safe? Are we safe? Right? Did we make the best decision? I just heard a few minutes ago someone was like, "That wasn't the best decision I could have made." I'm like, "No, it wasn't." So even for ourselves, did we create a culture of care in our own homes? Right? We think of self care all the time, but it's so much. It goes so much further. Right? It's environmentally. Right? It's those other things around our health and all those other pieces. So that's kind of the difference for me. Right? When I'm talking about it, even from the stage, my way of talking about it is like, listen, do your members feel like you care about their academics? That's creating that culture of care, right? Are you keeping them to your program or to your event or your new member education till 11 o'clock at night, knowing that you had them at 5 o'clock, knowing they haven't gotten homework done yet? So now when they leave you at 11, and that's if they leave you, because we know they love you so much, they're not going to want to leave. Did they have time to get their homework done before 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.?
Mm.
And then now we're going into sleep deprivation, right? And so that's kind of looking at the full gamut, right, of everything. So I think people automatically go to alcohol and drugs, but it's not just that; it's all the pieces. It's like taking the wellness wheel and everything. Are we attacking those areas and keeping them safe during those, in our activity in our daily living?
I want to go a little deeper into that. And you brought up the wellness wheel. So I want to use that as a vehicle when I want to get very, I mean, look, we have a lot of student affairs practitioners are always looking for that
Yeah.
tool in their pocket to chuck into a dialogue. And I think the wellness wheel is a good vehicle to put things into different categories. So if you're looking, sort of scanning around the wheel, looking
Yeah.
for a question that a professional could use in dialogue with a student leader that fits within one of those categories that can kind of poke the mind of that student to think about how are we using this concept of culture of care in a particular area, in a
Mhm.
particular section of that wheel. I always think of the Trivial Pursuit, that little wheel. I can't
It's
help
so
that
many
always comes
colors.
into my mind, like which pie piece. So if we're thinking about that particular conversation and we want to
Yeah.
give some real tools in the buckets of our professionals that are on with us,
Yeah.
go through a couple of those scenarios that jump to mind that are realistic and that they can use.
Yeah, so if I'm a professional, I am actually. So one of the things, when they walk into my office, my first thing is thinking about their emotional wellness, right? So I'm like, hey, know you are going through the new member education. How do you honestly feel? Like, does it feel good to you? Does it feel murky? Let's talk about that. Not in the sense of trying to get anybody in trouble, but in the sense of checking in on you, right? Normally you're dressed to a T. Today you look a little like relax. So what's the difference here? Are you getting enough sleep? So being able to tap in through the emotions, right? Or if career services, right? And career services is gearing up for, if I were career services and we're gearing up for jobs and we're talking about, hey, we know that you're a part of this organization. We also know about getting you ready. Some of the things, what are some of the things that this chapter is doing to prepare you for going through the interviews, right? Have y'all had an opportunity to look through resumes? Have you had an opportunity of getting even your new members who came in? Did you look at their resumes or even athletes? If you are an athlete, right, and you're new to the team, we're talking about a little bit of looking at maybe your physical. So, like, hey, are you getting enough sleep? How are you feeling? Are they making you take in the what do you call the goalies last? Like, talk to me about that experience. So I think as a professionals, thinking through the wellness wheel and tacking a question on about their experience of where they are now, right? And getting to more of not just an open-ended yes or no. Tell me about that experience. What did that look like for you? How does that really make you feel? When you talk to your parents, what are you telling them about that experience? Because I think we've lost the sight that they're telling their parents everything, be it good, bad, or ugly. They're telling their parents everything. And so asking them to be a part of those conversations as well. Thinking about those responsible decision making, community wellness, right? Well, hey, I know yesterday was a heavy political day. Did anything come up in your chapter or anything come up in your group and organization that maybe I can help you answer that we can kind of talk through? Maybe if there are some emotions that's going on. So you got two there, right? Environmental, looking at community, and also looking at personal. So I think it is going to behoove us to really think through asking them more than how they're doing because we know what we're going to get. Fine, good, I'm all right, right? But asking them and really attacking those areas around the wellness wheel and asking them questions that's specific to that area, right? So they can be able to give you a little bit of feedback. Make sense?
That's great. No, that's great. I think it's better than the completely open-ended, which they can brush off.
Mm-hmm.
It's more grounded in a particular area that they can then attach an understanding of what they're going through in a way that really answers your question. And that
Right,
second level of questioning. How are you doing?
right.
Fine. Well, let's talk about this area of how you're doing. Let's really dig into fine. Um, and I think when we're talking about culture of care in particular, I think there are people that when they hear it, it feels separate from, well, we have processes and we have traditions and we have
Mm-hmm.
very important pieces. I'm not going to call them a sacred cow, but I'm going to call them essential to the identity of our members as members. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if this whole culture of care thing fits in with what might be hard or a rite of passage or how someone individually themselves feel like they earned their place in
Mm-hmm.
our organization or in our community. So
Right.
how can we tie these two ideas of programs that are challenging and that have deliberate processes that um, have a process that's earned,
Mm-hmm.
but
Mm-hmm.
also being done in a way that is caring and that is uplifting and that's centering around them being that long-term asset as a member. How do
Yeah.
we tie those two together closer when they're so disparate in so many students' minds?
This is a hard question. Like I would love to say, oh, this is easy. This is probably the bread and butter of like, if we could answer that, we'd be millionaires in this profession. It's hard, right? Because I think when I look at fraternity story life, especially, so many things of what they feel their culture has been built on are these traditions, right?
Mhm.
And I say traditions with a winky eye because some of these traditions are amazing, and then some of them are like womp womp. Like let's go back to the drawing board. When I think about even I have friends that are coaches, I hear some of the same conversations from them as well. And so when I think about the culture of care and traditions, you can have both, but it has to make sense. So because of the profession I am, I also get to sit in this awesome office called conduct. And so some of the times while I'm in this office, I will ask the question, did you have to go through this? Yeah. Did you like it? No. Why are you doing it to someone else, right? Why did you feel the need to think I'm gonna do it to them because I didn't like it, right? And so I think that that goes back on us as professionals. We really have to start having some of that engaging conversation to kind of say, listen, we know it doesn't get lost on us that your pro fights, that your alumni, that all these other folks have told you this is the way it should be happened. This is the way I did it in 1973. This is the way my son did it in 1999. And this is the way we're going to continue to do it for my grandson in 2026. And we got to say no, because it should have stopped in 1973, right? So we really, really have to figure out as professional staff what is our philosophy? What do we care about? What matters? And then when we figure out those things, then we need to have a deeper conversation with the staff that's touched with the touch points of our students daily to kind of say, listen here, I know it's rush. I know you may be excited. Talk to me about some of your non-negotiables. And the student's gonna look at you like, wait, what do you mean? I just want to get into a good fraternity. Great, I know that. But what's your non-negotiable in this fraternity? And then once they hear those conversations, talk about, then if you don't see that, walk away. Right? I don't
Mhm.
think we have that conversation enough. I think
Mhm.
we talk about it from the stage. We allow speakers to talk about it and a scare tactic of like, don't do it, you go to jail or you die. Yeah, but also your mental health could be jacked up. Yeah, but also physically you can be jacked up, right? And so I think making sure that we dig down in those questions to say they may say this is tradition, but if tradition may mean you don't know what's going to happen on the other side, then you might want to avoid mission, right?
Mhm.
Like I feel like a tradition is a young lady came to me one time and she said they're hazing me, and I was like, oh, let's talk about it. And she said they're making me wear white every Tuesday. And I said, duly noted. And so we talked through that. I was like, okay, we're going to talk about ritual, right? We're going to talk
Mhm.
about when you go to work, you have to wear a uniform. That's the brand that the uniform has, right? Well, on these Tuesday nights, this is their ritual practice. I said, are they making you drink pig's blood? She's like, nope, then we're good, right? Like they're not making you eat, do anything. You're just doing some reflecting pieces, and they're talking about those reflective pieces. So when we talk about that tradition, I think we got to actually break it out. I think fraternities and sororities have been sworn to secret about everything, but there are some things we have to begin to have to say we have to break these walls down to keep you safe, to keep us safe, and keep the students safe, right? And so I think that's one of the things too that I hear from parents. They're like, well, they say it's tradition, so I don't want to mess with tradition. Ma'am, sir, if it doesn't feel good, then we have to say something, right? I think there's a difference between a safe tradition and an unsafe tradition. And let's unpack that. Let's have some real reality conversations around that. So, David, again, I wish I could give you the magic pill and say, this is how you do that. I cannot, but what I can say is that as professional staff, we have to charge ourselves to change our mind to be able to start asking the right questions, right? To start asking the more deeper questions. And we're like, I can hear professionals right now saying, girl, are you serious? We got so much stuff on our plate. I know, but I also know we don't want to have any more on our plate that may have us in legal, funerals, and anything beyond that, right? So we do
Yeah.
have to take that time to engage in a different way and engage in a conversation. And so as a professional that works in fraternity and sorority leadership and learning for us at UD, my conversations now will shift. Talk to me about when is the last time you checked in on your new members individually? When is the last time you had a conversation with them? I know that traditionally, right? I know that you all have beach weekend or all these other, I don't want to start naming them because people gonna be like, but naming all these things that you have as organizations. Talk to me about, do your new members feel good about that? Do they feel like they know what's going on? We know there should be some element of surprise. Tell me the surprise because I don't need to be surprised, right? Tell me, what are you planning to
You don't
do?
need to be surprised.
I don't want to be surprised. Tell me, what does that look like? And then again, you may be afraid, like, I don't want to tell you because you may tell us no. Then if you think that, then let's rethink the whole thing because that lets me know you already know that there's something that can go left. And so let's talk about what happens if that goes left, right? I know traditionally you have beach weekend. For me, it's in Maryland, so it's in Ocean City oftentimes, right? You have it. And so that's great. But what it happens when you say everybody sits right here in the water and the undertow pulls them in? Are you prepared to deal with the aftermath of that? Right. And so kind of thinking through and challenging some of those traditions that they call traditions, but are they safe? Are they mentally going to mentally support the student that's going through those new traditions? Are they enhancing their leadership education? And then watch this. This is my favorite. Is it going to be something that really prepares them to be a better leader in your chapter and a better global citizen? If
Mm.
not, then let's rethink those.
What's the preparation value? Yes, yes.
Mhm. I
Do
like
how are
it.
they more prepared to do that job as a member of our community, as a member of the larger community? Great. The value add, the value add.
Mhm.
I think one of the pieces that I always take away when you talk about this idea of culture of care, it's like a lens through which we are looking at whatever activity, whether it's a hard activity or an easy activity or just basic learning, whatever that might be, like what's the caring aspect of this and our responsibility to each and every one of our existing and our newest members of this organization, this team, this
Right.
um and I was thinking through, I the lens, if you really think about onboarding, can stay there. The lens can stay there as you're looking at all different kinds of things. And
Mhm.
I have the fortune of being a part of a advanced leadership training program through my fraternity, and part of that is a ropes course where the students are going through it and they're facilitating it. And as I was looking at this, and they were talking about the students are always, we could use a ropes course for team building for our newest members, and we could learn about teamwork and all the things that are great about a ropes course. I was thinking about the safety lines attaching them to the structures. So if they fell, they didn't fall far and they didn't hit
Right.
anything. And I was thinking about that's kind of the culture of care, and brought up the conversation of how are we doing these hard things? How are we doing these challenging things that get students to push the envelope of their comfort in a way that they're safe, to understand their abilities they might not know in a way that they're protected, and how they can stretch and reach and grow, but the cost is not catastrophic in potential. And so that's what made me think about that this idea of culture of care is really a lens. And we're able to look at the what we're doing and kind of the how we're doing what we're doing in a way to make sure that we're doing it in the safest possible, most uplifting possible way. And that's the way you got me thinking about culture of care. It's the safety lines on the ropes course.
Yeah.
I thought I would bring that back to you as sort of the impact of this being a lens. And I'm going to ask you, how can we use that as a lens, thinking about not just what we take away? Because
Yeah.
sometimes students are there with us. They're like, all right, yep, the sprinkle sorting, no value. No one's going to be a better member because they could sort the sprinkles. Nope, nope, nope. But now we got a block of time we need to fill.
Right.
So when they're being creative, are there
Right.
things that you can suggest in using that idea, the culture of care, in the creative process of filling meaningful activities and onboarding?
Yeah, you just did something I don't like to do. You gave an activity out. So now somebody is writing down like, oh, I didn't have that before. So let me,
I know.
I wanna go here though, because I appreciate that. I was raised in this student affairs world in residence life and housing. And so my good old director of housing had us to go to a campground every year. And so what you're talking about exactly, like we had to do those rope courses. And the key phrase was challenge by choice, right? And so or a staff member will walk over and say, this is challenge by choice. Now, I was a fluffy kid. So in my mind, none of those ropes were strong enough to hold my fluffy tail. Like I just did not believe that they could hold me. And so it was always a conversation piece around, Sarah, this is going to be okay, right? And so one of the things I think about, even for me as that fluffy kid, in order for me to walk through that confidently, I had to know A, I need to see you do it before me. B, I needed to feel safe. I
Mm,
needed to know that this was going to be a good experience for me. And one of the things that made the difference are the people ahead of me said, yeah, it changed me because now I think like this versus this.
mm.
And I think that we have alum that will say, oh, back in the day, this happened to me. That's not really good. That you're like, alum, shh, don't tell that story. But we don't have enough alum or profiles to say, because of this connection with this organization, I found a family that gave me confidence. Because of my confidence, I was able to go and do things that I never thought I would be able to do. And today, because of all of that, I am now a member of this, or I now work here. And I feel, when we talk about this lens, to me, the first thing comes in mind is leadership lens, right? Because at the end of the day, we pride ourselves, especially in fraternity sorority life, about bringing up strong leaders. And to me, a strong leader is someone who cares about an individual in and out of season. That simply means when we're with each other and when we're not with each other, right? When something happens over the summer to a member, it surprises me how all the members swamp back to UD. The situation didn't happen at UD, but this is where the family was formed. And they're here and they take care of each other and they check in on each other. They got me like, what do you need? I got you. Let me support you, right? Because this is the foundation where it was built. And so it's like, what are you building? And it's like, I love that you said through the lens, because when you look through, what are you seeing? Are you seeing that you are creating space for safety and care and making sure that people understand that from this experience, they will only grow and be wiser and stronger, right? I can't ever say that I've gone through a drunken experience and came out wiser. Wiser to be like, I shouldn't be drinking that, right? There is no experience that I may have had that's with any alcohol that has said, now I know how to be a stronger leader. I know my leader components. I now can say I'm a strategic planner. So it's thinking through, like, it doesn't sound fun or sexy, but then it's like, how do you take those simple things like you just talk about, a ropes course, or how do you take, I know as chapters love to pass the candle. How do you take these experiences and then so for someone to walk away and say, because of this experience, because I had the opportunity to grow during the intake process of this, or during the recruitment process of this, or the new member education process of this, or the new member, the new player this, I now become stronger. One of the things I have to talk about really quickly is that I do some work with the basketball team, and I love it because I they help me grow, but they have this moment where they go through this culture of education, right? Where they are like, this is about learning how to be a good leader off the court. We don't care about on the court right now. During this 60 minutes, we care about what does your leadership look like off the courts. Well, imagine if we said that even for our fraternities and sororities, right? Imagine what does your leadership look like during the summertime? I had so many students call me back and said, I have to work 8 hours. Surprise, that's normal, right? And so they're like, what, right? And so we're like,
8 hours in a row?
prepare for that, right? We had leadership retreat that lasts 10 hours, so you should be able to work 8 hours, right? So we talk a little bit about that. But so I think the lens is a leadership lens. Everything that we're talking about is preparing you for tomorrow or for the day after, more importantly for beyond graduation. And so when you talk about activities, skills, it can still be fun and sexy, but still at the end, is it something that people walk away like, oh, I had the greatest experience, right? Oh, that was really good. Or will we have a story? Like, you can still do some fun stuff, right? I will never, one of the most fun things I ever did, I don't even, until now I'm getting ready to do what you say and give an example. I don't want to do that, but here we go. One of the things we did, which I love, is that we went whitewater rafting. And they made us like be one person in the raft with a senior member. And it was like, yikes, if I lead them in the wrong way and we flip this over, right? But it was fun. And I felt safe because we had a lesson, we had education, we had life, that we had all the things that we needed. We did in the daytime, we did something at night. Like, it was all done in proper rules, regulations, and policies, but we still had a good time. We had a good story to talk about it. Community service, building a habitat home. We had to be there at 6 a.m. Not getting there at 6 p.m., but like there with the hammer and ready to go at 6 a.m., right? Nobody wants to be up at 6 a.m., but we did that. We had stories to talk about that. So I think there's things you can do that you can make it fun, that you can make it sexy. But in the end of the day, ask yourself, when people walk away from this experience, will they have grown mentally, emotionally, or physically?
I love all that. Love it. I want to move toward how we, and you touched on this briefly, and I want to go deeper,
Okay.
how we empower our newest members to be able to identify even the things like you talked a little bit about what doors to avoid walking in the first place, knowing here are my boundaries, and this is why I'm making A decision compared to B decision, right? But once they're through that door, how can we empower those individual new members, whether it's a team or it's a club or it's a fraternity or sorority, how do we empower them to be able to, maybe it's reset boundaries, stick to boundaries that they feel confident about already? How do we empower them to understand what might not be visible 2 and 3 steps down the road that could be problematic? What are some of the tactical ways that we could do education in that means to help toward prevention? And then the other part of that is, are we able to get newest members to be thinking about a culture of care that they should be a part of for the other new members, for the overall organization they're joining, the team? How can we weave these topics into the education of our new members in the most effective way?
That's a great question. I think let me start backwards first. Yes, we can get our new members there. I think some of them are already heading in that direction. They're
Mm.
already walking into this experience like, this is not what you about to do with me. And they're dropping quick. So when they walk in our office, they're like, they were weird. We're not doing that. I'm like, okay, sounds great, right? So I do feel we have a group of folks that's coming into all of our organizations and sports teams with a more appreciative mind of I want to be a part, but that comes with limits. I think you tapped in. I'm going to do a selfish plug around my research right now. My research is really looking into leadership development and are we working together as units to make that happen? So, for instance, I look at fraternity sorority life. It's fraternities headquarters working with institutional, working with campus-based professionals and the students to create a framework for that leadership development for that new member. Oftentimes, most new members are joining the organization probably by the age of 18 or 19, right? So they really have just crossed over out of high school, got a little I'm free kind of thing going on. And so they really haven't stopped and identified who are they as a leader. And I think that's where it starts. When I have an understanding of who I am, what I can do, and kind of my voice, then I'm more convinced and I feel more confident that I can project my voice in ways that keep me safe. So I think when you talk about what is some tips and tools, number one, I think as institutions, we got to start educating our freshmen when they walk through the door around leadership education. Like that has to start. I don't know how, and I know like people like Sarah, we get money cut here and there. How do we make it work? I think it's going to come working with our orientations folks. I think it's going to come working with our specialized staff who work with students during that freshman year, right? The FYS courses, like how do we really engage a strong leadership development inventory that students are really understanding who they are during that first and second year of their collegiate experience.
Mm.
So by the time they decide to join our Greek organizations, right, then they'll have a little bit of that confidence built up of knowing a little bit about who I am and what I'm looking for as a leader and what I'm looking to be involved with a leader. I know for us as fraternity sorority, we kind of spend some time there, right, with those new folks that's walking through the door. Let's talk about who you are. Let's talk about the power of your voice, and let's talk about you are a greater asset to the organization because you're there, because you can help shape and give them thoughts, ideas, and suggestions, right? Like some things you like, I saw you do that. That didn't even fly. That didn't look good. So here's my suggestion, right? Being able to offer that. But I think we have to build that confidence up among this new member class. And I think it starts from that freshman year, from the moment they touch the campus. We're saying we're investing in you to creating you a stronger leader that have an
Mm.
idea of who you are, how you want to serve, and what's the parameters around your serving.
I love that. Building them up first, pouring
Yes,
into pouring into their skill sets and their ability to look in the mirror and see who they are and what they and who they want to be, and
absolutely.
pouring into them to know that they are an asset, a building block of our community. I love that.
Yes.
I want to move a little bit next to that layer of as organizations, whether it's a group of teams in the athletic department or it's fraternities and sororities in a community. When we think about culture of care, there's also responsibility and opportunity from organization to organization, from team to team. The women's basketball team having sometimes conversations with the men's or vice versa about
Mhm.
how we're onboarding and how we're treating our newest team members. And
Yeah.
certainly within fraternity and sorority communities that have elected leadership at a council level.
Mhm.
When we think about that at that, we have the individual and then we have that organization and then that council, that community level. When we're thinking about it through that way, how can community leaders com- discuss and kind of get on the same page as to what the responsibilities that they have to maintain this culture of care organization to organization so that they can have tough conversations, that they can
Mhm.
provide each other support, and sometimes that support comes in the form of accountability at
Mhm.
a peer level, which can be the most powerful. And with that, how do we as professionals, most of our audience right now, how do we look at building that within our councils, within our communities? Um, what are the ways we can think about it, and what are the ways we can strategize building that?
I think one of the ways, I'm going to piggyback on what we do at UD is we give them that time to talk, right? Like, let's just do a SWOT analysis and let's just talk about our community as a whole. I think it's nice for them to be able to tell us what you see, because I think oftentimes we're like, well, this is what I've seen. They're like, you wasn't with us on Cleve Ave. I was like, okay, my bad, right? So what giving them that opportunity for them to have that conversation to say, this is what we see when we look at you, IFC, or IFC say, this is what we see when we look at you, Panhandle, or, Panhandle to go, NPHC, this is what we want to see more of, or this is, so I think it's time to giving them, open the floodgates to allow conversations to exist. But I think, too, to do it through a framework that doesn't become finger pointing and down talking, but to do it in a point to recognize that we are only stronger as our weakest link, right? We've all heard and said that probably 1,000 times, but this is a space that we can create that synergy and energy around it, right? So when I go to campuses, I would love to take 2 hours to go through, like, let's build this culture care together, but we can't. So we do it in very broad terms, right? Mind, body, and soul. And then we have them talk about, if you had to do anything for the mind as a whole community, what would be those things that you would do? How would you follow up? And I hope that staff is in the room during these conversations, because the point there is to encourage the staff to go, okay, you saw what they said. How this is how you could probably help hold them accountable, right?
Mm.
But we break it out mind, body, and soul, because sometimes they're like, oh, we don't even have food to eat. We don't have the money to pay for them. Okay, so staff, do you have a little extra funds, or do you know of ways that they could probably feed new members because they don't have that ability? Sounds like a low hanging fruit, but the reality of it is that here's the deal, right? So let's say they want to feed you. The organization is just as hungry as the new member or the new folks in the room, but there's no money. So now they tax the new people in the room. Hey, you all, each one of you got to bring a pizza. Yikes, that's not what we want to do. But if they know that, but the staff understands they are probably going to do that, then let's go ahead and give them a little bit of funds that they can all get cheese pizzas for $6.99, right? At Domino's or whatever, right? Or let's have a partnership with this organization to know, like, okay, we know on Wednesday nights we're going to feed you. Because we may know, even though we have organizations that are functioning, there still may be people in those organizations that's feud and secure. And so some of that may manifest in different ways, and it could be
Sure.
hazing tactics, right? So we want to be able to think about that. So I'll have them go through, what's the mind, what's the body, what can you do for the soul, right? And we talk about the soul in the sense of, this is the stuff you don't see, this is the stuff that they go home with, and I think that's where staff is very instrumental in being able to talk about that part, because that's the mental health compartment where they can be able to get those resources, tools, speakers, all those types of involvement, pieces of involvement, to get those councils or those governing bodies or those captains or presidents to talk to the membership and the new members in a different light with a different mindset, right? But being able to bring it down, and at least if you can't do the 8 things, right? I know that the wellness wheel, some people say 7, 8, or 9. I know you may not be able to do all those, but you can still break it down mind, body, and soul. And I think sharing that feedback with your advisor, coach, or whomever to say, here's some areas we saw, we need your support. This is how you can support us, right? And so we think, maybe some of those things we think are very low hanging fruit, but they're the small things actually that ends up being the big stuff, that ends up being the stuff that we now see in conduct offices that are not very pleasant.
Mm. I love that. One, create space for them to build trust with each other, to have
Mhm.
the conversations and to have a relationship such that they can hold each other accountable. I love that. First, it's not low-hanging fruit, it's essential. It's baseline. And then, listen. As a professional, listen to see what problems you can solve that then take it off the table for them to be able to solve bigger problems. I love
Yeah.
that. So maybe it is cheap. This is not sponsored by Domino's or any other particular pizza or brand,
Sorry.
but to be able to put no basic needs off to the side of, maybe it's simple like a room, or maybe it's more like pizza, or whatever it is that you can help solve, knowing that that lets them think of the other things and focus energy in those other places. I love that.
Yeah.
One of the things that I know you're really good at, and as we're getting closer toward our end of our time, I want to really highlight that when you work with communities and you're on a stage talking about culture of care,
Mhm.
I love how students are able to listen and see, and they're able to listen to you talk about what success looks like when we do have a culture of care, like why it's worth this, that it's not, the push, let's push them away from something scary, but it's the pull. Let's draw them towards something that's worth the effort of maybe tough conversations to get rid of something that it's tradition, even though it's not valuable. And I love the way that you're able to frame this idea of what it looks like when we're successful, and whether that's an individual having their experience as a member of a team or a fraternity or sorority, or what that success looks like as a whole group, a team, or even as a community. I think you do such a good job of layering in a vision of what winning looks like when we're putting ourselves through the effort of putting this lens of the idea of a culture of care in a real deliberate way of building a new member experience. That I wanted to give the opportunity to really let you highlight when you're sharing what success looks like as that pull, to talk a little bit about that. And I think it's really engaging. And I think that engagement makes it's empowering for students because they want to work toward that vision. So I want to give you a little bit of time. What does it look like when we're there? What's success look like when we're really using a culture of care from that lens of the experience is and it feels like and we've accomplished? What is success?
You see the smile on my face? I think it's like as you were talking, I'm like, oh yay, I love this. David, it is. I think about you. I'm going to use you for an example. I've seen you at conferences. I've seen you. I know you got really nervous, right? I see you at conferences. I see you when you walk down the hall, and I see how people just, hey, and they hug you and they talk to you, and you're talking to them, and you'll take time out, and then even if you can't stop and talk, you'll make sure to touch their hand, touch their shoulder, right, to let them know I acknowledge you, I saw you, and the person's like, oh, David saw me, yes, and people are excited, right? So you're like, where are you going with this, Sarah? That's culture of care. Right? Sometimes it's just being seen, just knowing that I had a space at the table. I felt safe. I feel loved. I feel like I have a true relationship bonding. Remember I told you I walk into women's basketball when they're in the middle of practice and they see me and they're like, hey, and I'm like, oh, they saw me. I am so fangirling over these women when they like, hey, I'm like, hey, like they saw me, they like me, right? So I think it is this moment we've all experienced being in a space that just gave us warm fuzzies. We've all experienced being in a space that we're like, yes, even in my own sisterhood. I tell this story from the stage, and so now I'm going to run it because I'm going to tell it now here. I had COVID really bad. You remember this? I had COVID really, really bad. I was in the hospital for many days, and we did not know. It was only years later, my sister's like, yeah, we thought you was going to die. I was like, oh my gosh, right? We was really bad. But I came home. It was still in the height of COVID. It was like maybe 2 months after it just came out. And all of these groceries was on my step. Like it was Clorox, like people couldn't even find Clorox wipes. I don't even know how they got on my steps, but they were there. People couldn't even find Lysol. I don't even know how I got on my steps when it was there. Food galore. Like it was so much stuff on my steps. And I was like, what in the world? Because the whole time I'm coming home thinking, I don't have any food, I don't have anything. And now everything is out. But on my steps was everything I could possibly ever think about needing. And I just remember beginning like, oh my gosh, who did this? And I'm thinking it's the partner. It was not, it was my sorority sisters.
Hmm.
My sorority sisters was like, girl, we're going to make sure you have what you need. Culture of care was like, I know what it may look like out here in the streets. It may be a little uncomfortable, it may be a little bit whatever, but I know my sister needs me, so I'm going to show up. Culture of care looks like, I know that my brother has been a little distant. He haven't really been talking to us much, but we're going to tap him on the shoulder to be like, hey, what's going on? Culture of care looks like, hey, new member, I know you want to join us. I know you don't drink. We don't want you to drink. We want you to be you. We're excited that you don't drink. Talk to all of us about that, right? Culture of care is when I had a chapter president who was going for he was going to be an ordained minister, and his chapter showed up sitting on the front row. Culture of care is understanding the folks in your organization and knowing that you're going to support them, and or understanding the people that's around, that's looking, that's watching, that you see them watching, and you can still put an arm around them and say, you don't have to join us, but what do you need? We can still support you. It looks like a family. It looks like togetherness. It looks like the true essence of brotherhood and sisterhood. It doesn't mean that you don't argue. It doesn't mean you don't get tired of each other. It doesn't mean you may hit ignore on that phone a couple of times, but it does mean that you come back around and go, okay, I'm together. What do you need? How can I support? Right? That's what that looks like. It looks like that we got each other's back. I'm not going to put you in harm's way. I don't want to ever see you suffer in any way, shape, or form because that's not fair. I want the best for you. It's understanding that I want your mental health to be better than my mental health if that's possible, right? Because I'm going to invest that time and energy in you. So when you talk about this culture of care, I get so excited because it's like, yeah, it's a true essence of a community. I wonder right now how many student affairs professionals will sit and honestly say their community looks like a true community. And some of them don't. We will say, if it's a community, but is it a community? Are we big? Are we borrowing and sharing with one another? Are we working with one another? Do we care what each other look like? What each other's genders are? With each do we care about any of those things? Or we just care you wear Greek letters, I wear Greek letters, we got each other's back,
Hmm.
right? To me, that's what that community is. It's like we don't care about anything else other than you Greek, I'm Greek. We got to support each other. It doesn't matter, boy, girl. It doesn't matter. It just matters that we're in this community together. And then make it even stronger. If I always tell people, if you all have the identification card, that means y'all all are a part of this together. And that means you're all a part of this organization together called this school, right? For us, it's the Blue Hen Country. If we're all a part of this Blue Hen Country together, that means we are obligated to support each other, to take care of each other, to make sure that each other feels safe, feel heard, feel seen, feel supported, feel loved, loved, right? And I think last but not least is that once we can convince folks to fall in love with their organization, it automatically happens. If you're in love with your organization, you don't want to do anything that's going to damage the reputation of it. You don't want to do anything that could get you separated from it. And you do everything to support it and to make sure that you wear those letters with a sense of pride.
Hmm. Yeah. It's that feeling of belonging you just keep describing. That end result is a true and an honest and a genuine feeling that I belong and I belong with these people and I belong in this organization, on this team, in this community, that I am an essential piece and I'm seen as that. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I love the way, and this is why I describe you as pull programming, because you leave students, with that idea. It's pulling them forward to that. They want it themselves. They want to build it for others, and they know the strength, because those groups where everyone belongs, they can do everything. They can do anything. They can win any championship. They can accomplish anything. They just win. It's just
Mhm.
at being them. And
Mhm.
that's the appealing part. Um, I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that, because I think in seeing that, people can see why they put you on stages, why they put you in front of their students, because when students leave the room, they're better, and they not just feel better, they know how to do better.
Yeah.
So thank you for the conversation, Sarah, as I'm looking at the clock. And I know that we've been able to dive into some good topics about how to use this culture of care as a lens to improve our skills and our student skills at understanding what we could be doing, what we should be doing in onboarding new members. Thank you everyone for the time and the energy in joining us in this conversation. And I hope you look forward to our next web conversation that you can sign up through Campus Speak's website. And as I said, Sarah is brought onto many stages, but there are still opportunities for more. And we'd love to talk with you about how to get her working with your students in your community. Thank you so much for being here.